All right, everybody, I'm here with Alex, and Alex has replaced his full-time income in less than a year by doing web development out of his house, kind of as a solopreneur lifestyle. It's awesome to talk to him. He's got his bow tie on. So I want you to meet Alex and hear a little bit about what's going on with him and the kind of changes he's been able to make this happen so that he's got this, full-time job replacement web developer working with his clients, ongoing basis, awesome stuff. So Alex, can you kind of jump in, introduce yourself a little bit, and maybe tell us a little bit about what's going on with you?
Sure. So I'm Alex. My brand is Mr. Website Designer. It's actually the bow tie is part of the brand. And I've been in web design, graphic design, pretty much for over 18 years. I took couple elective classes in college on graphic design and web design, and ended up doing it as a hobby. And fresh out of college, started working for a web design company. And that was back in 2001 or so when the whole .com boom was happening, and was working there for a while and pretty much been doing that ever since for different companies, not necessarily web design companies, but working for marketing departments, creative departments, doing that kind of stuff. And the company I was with for almost the last 10 years, it was a financial company. They ended up shutting down, and basically everybody got laid off. And that was kind of the time that I thought to myself, maybe this would be a good time for me to try to do this on my own, because I've been doing it for a while. I've been freelancing, kind of doing it on the side, but it was more of just kind of side projects for not a lot of money. I wasn't keeping anyone on retainers. There was no retainer. That wasn't even a thought of mine. Basically, it was just one-offs, like, hey, I need a website. Can you build me one? Sure. And most of my referrals were kind of like friends, basically, that hey, do you know a web designer or someone can build me a site for cheap? And that was always the key, is like, hey, I can build you a cheap website. And I never used WordPress. It was always from scratch. I think WordPress was, I don't know, I was kind of, for some reason I was scared of WordPress because I didn't know what it was, and it seemed like it was being one more thing for me to learn. And so I was doing that, and then decided to do it on my own. And it was one of those things that you kind of scared at first, and you're like, okay, I don't know how I'm gonna get all these clients, because I'm not a salesperson. And that has been my biggest fear, basically from the beginning, or always, because I've always kind of thought that I should do this on my own. And a lot of people kept telling me, like, you should do this on your own. But to me, it wasn't, I knew I had the skills. I just didn't have the sales aspect of it, is the marketing aspect of trying to put myself out there and meeting with people and trying to get clients. Basically, that to me was the biggest part that was preventing me from doing this on my own. And but yeah, it's been one of those things.
So now you've gone from cheap sites, everybody just wanting a cheap site, to $10,000 clients and the 5-figure family trophy. So this is really cool. So what do you feel like was the big shift? Like, what's the magic? Like, how did you kind of make the shift from everybody saying, hey, Alex, can you build me a website for cheap, to, hey, you know what, I think it's going to be, $10,000 or more?
Right. So I came across your Facebook post, which pretty much, I think that's how most people come across your stuff. And when I read it, it was literally kind of written, I think it was written for me. Because the way I read it, just everything that you said in that post totally resonated with me. And it was like, well, that's me. So I checked out your program and had a call with you. And I think the biggest, I guess, not problem, but thing that I was kind of skeptical about is is this really like worth it? Plus it was, several $1,000s, which to me, I'm just starting out. I'm not making much money. So for me to put in so much money into something that might or might not pan out, I was kind of scared. And what made me kind of, I guess, pull the trigger was basically, I reached out to some of your previous students through the program that seemed to be doing good, and just basically had conversations with them of how they thought, what they thought of the program, and how it helped them, and if it's worth it or not. And basically I pulled the trigger, and I'm glad I did, because it's not so much the skill set because I already had the skill aspect of it. It was more of the mental aspect. That was the biggest hurdle that I had to overcome, is thinking of myself as basically higher quality than what I was giving myself credit for, because the pricing that I was charging was way lower than what I'm really worth. And because I've been doing this for so long, my skills definitely reflect that, but my pricing did not. So after I went through your program, I kind of slowly started shifting my mentality into, hey, I'm worth it. And if you don't want to pay that for the site, then there's thousands of other designers that can do an okay job that you'll probably be happy with. But this is not the kind of level of service that, like I provide higher level of service. And it's not, hey, I'm just gonna, like before I would be like, hey, I'll just build you a website for $1,200, $1,500 at most. Like I never charged, I don't think, anything more than $1,500. That would have been like, oh my gosh, I charged $1,500 for a website. Sometimes it was, $800, $1,000, and which to me at the time seemed like a lot because I was doing it on the side, because I had a full-time job. And so this was just all extra money that it didn't matter. But once I didn't have a full-time job, I realized, well, how many of these projects do I have to get every month to make a living? Because, $1,000 projects, you'd have to constantly be looking for work for clients. And to me, looking for clients was the biggest kind of fear. So it was one of those things like, I have to be constantly doing what I fear the most, is looking for clients. But now I've been doing this for a while, and I see that the work that I've done for clients, they love what I've done for them, and they tell everyone that they know, if somebody might be interested in the site or whatnot, like, look how great of a job Alex did for me. Like, we totally love our site. And they all leave awesome Google reviews. So I have like lots of Google reviews that everybody is just saying what they really mean. It's not like people are just making up stuff. And when I get a new client, they ask me for, can we see some of your work? And, obviously I send them to my website to see my portfolio, but I also tell them, I can give you references to pretty much all my previous clients. You're more than welcome to call them, and they'll tell you firsthand how it is to work with me. And that's been kind of a thing that I've started doing as well, is just, and sometimes people do that, and they see the quality of work that I do. And not everybody, of course, has the budget. So, and my acceptance rate is, for my proposal, is not 100%. It's roughly about 40%, I would say, acceptance rate, which is, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it is what it is. Even at 40%, I'm still busy, like really busy, because these things take time. And of course, when people want to spend a certain amount of money, they expect certain results. and the time that I put into it is why the pricing is a little bit higher. So because I estimate projects on time, how long I think it's going to take me, plus any kind of tech that or plugins that I might have to purchase to basically make it work. So there's several factors. I switched to WordPress because it's just way more efficient to handle a large amount of projects. I've optimized my WordPress, I guess, workflow, which helped me a lot to basically, I installed all the plugins and all the basic setup that I would need to do with a WordPress site. And then I basically saved that, exported it. And then anytime I have a new site, I basically start with that. It's not a template, but it's a template setup, which I don't have to reinstall everything every time, because there's a lot of plugins that I work with that on every project. So that saves a lot of time for me. But yeah, it's been really good, surprisingly good. I've originally started working with small kind of to mid-sized businesses. Lately, with the 10K plus, these have been more corporate projects, and these are people that are finding me on Google. It's not even like, hey, it was a referral. I just got an email through my website from a guy that was the head of IT, and he had me build a smaller website for them, and he really loved my work, and he said, well, we have 2 other big projects that we want you to work on, and one of them is I'm currently working on that, and the next one, he said, is going to be in March, and that's going to be like the big one. With this one client, I'm going to be over $20,000 just with this one client, within less than a year.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's very interesting just to see that shift. And then another client I have, it was one of those things, we were currently working in phases, and I got introduced to that client over a year ago. Basically, someone at the company that I know, they said, well, our company is going to need a new website at some point, but it's a really, really big project. Is it something that you can help with? And I said, sure. So he passed my name on to the director or marketing director, and I didn't hear from them for a year. And then about a month ago, they reached out to me and said, hey, can you come in? We want to get started on this project. And I put in a bid, and they loved my presentation. And one of the IT people wanted to kind of get other quotes, but the marketing director said, no, we don't need to. I'm perfectly happy with everything Alex presented. The pricing is about right, and we don't need to see anybody else's. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm working, and that's one. It's going to be over a $10,000 project too, because they're doing it in phases. They want to do kind of phase 1 and phase 2, and kind of go from there. But yeah, so if there's a $20,000 club, maybe I'll get that trophy too someday.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
So in our conversation so far, you said you started out charging like, $800, maybe $1,200, maybe 15 at the highest.
Right.
And now you're like almost at 20 grand off one client.
Yep.
That's amazing. So like, first of all, why do you feel like you were charging the lower rates before? Did you feel like that's just what everybody charges, or, how did you come up with the original kind of low ticket pricing?
Because I figured at the time, nobody really wanted to pay more. And to me, it seemed like that was kind of like the going rate. I don't know, like there was just in my mind, I thought that was the kind of the going rate.
So you feel like maybe like you were just kind of like your mindset was just kind of holding you back a little bit?
Yeah, it was a mindset, and it was also I didn't know any better. Um, I wasn't really doing the research as far as going out there and trying to find out how much other people charge. And when you hear somebody charging, $3,000, $5,000 for a website, you're wondering like what they must be doing something like crazy to be charging that kind of money. And now I'm realizing that, I don't charge anything less than 2,000. Like my pricing starts at 2,000, and that's just like the bare minimum. And even 2,000 I have to know the client basically. So I don't take on every project. That's another thing is, something from your program is, your ideal client. Not every client is my ideal client. And I've had to say no, which it's hard to do because you're like, well, I'm turning down money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's one of those things that if I don't turn it down, I've realized that the people that pay the least are the hardest clients to work with. They're the most demanding.
Yeah.
And they keep asking for stuff, and you're like, well, this wasn't priced into the original bid. So you end up spending all this time, but not at the end of the day, you're not getting paid for it. And you could be spending that time working with clients that actually spend money, or you can spend that time networking or marketing or any other things that now I'm running into the issue is like, I don't have enough time. It's been kind of one of those things that I have to really manage my time wisely. And that's been another shift is, you think that, oh, well, I work for myself. I can do things, I have plenty of time, but you don't, especially when the big projects come in and everybody has deadlines and everybody wants everything at the same time. You really have to prioritize your projects. So that's been another kind of shift is, I have a gazillion calendars and to-do lists and follow-up lists and just all this stuff that I didn't have to do before, that I'm trying to manage it all by myself, which it's a handful, but it's definitely a learning process. It gets more, you get better at it the more you do it.
So when we first started talking, like right before we started having this conversation, one of the things you were like, well, I was kind of skeptical at first. And like, I know for a fact, like anytime I go out there and I say, hey, why don't you sell $5,000 sites? Why don't you sell $10,000 sites? Everybody, especially if you kind of come from a background where you're like, man, I can barely sell a $1,000 site. How am I supposed to do that? Everybody is like, I even like sometimes I'll even post like publicly on Facebook about like, here's what you do to onboard like a $5,000 or $10,000 client. And then you get all these hate comments about like, that's too much. That's ridiculous. Nobody pays. And there's so much skepticism over that. Right. But I always try to say, hey, you know what? If you're not charging at least $3,000 or at least maybe, like you were just saying, like the $2,000 bare bones minimum, like if you're not at least in that range, there's no way that you can do the work to actually help somebody. And so, so you said, hey, I'm kind of skeptical. Like, so, I think, you and probably everybody else kind of initially says, hey, 10 grand, I'm really skeptical about that. But now you're doing it. In fact, you're almost at 20 grand. It's like, it's absolutely something that can be done. And you already had the skills to do it, which is another thing that I think was really huge. And so what do you think really kind of helped you overcome that skepticism?
I think a lot of it has been feedback from my clients is that they really appreciate the work that I've done for them. And, keywords like amazing, fantastic,
yes.
Like, keep hearing that all over, we love it. And it kind of gives you that reassurance that you're doing something right. And there's other things that I do. I don't just do websites. That's been another thing is I kind of try to branch out and I do graphic design, I do Facebook social post design, things like that. And it's one area that I'm trying to expand is more of additional services that I can provide other than website design. I know Mr. Website Designer that's kind of my core, because that is my core. But I think one huge thing that kind of helped to grow my business has been making key partnerships with other businesses and individuals that are in the same, or not even in the same industry, but complementary businesses. So I go to a lot of networking events, and I actually now have an SEO partner. So even though I can do SEO myself, I don't have the time for it. And I'd rather focus on what I do best and let somebody else handle things that I just don't have time for, or I know that they can do a much better job. And that way the client gets best of both worlds. So the whole upselling additional services is great, because I have a social media partner, I have a video partner, I have an SEO partner, any kind of, pretty much anything you might ever need, I have a person for that. So, and if we refer to each other, we put, if there's a monthly retainer, for majority of these services are monthly retainers, we basically give each other percentage of that. So even though somebody else is doing the work, since you referred the client to them, they're giving you just get a paycheck. And it's great, because I refer majority of my clients for SEO to my SEO partner, and he refers, websites and graphic design to me. And we basically, anytime we have a meeting with a client, we try to upsell each other's services, which is great, because everybody wins. And the client gets everything that they want, and everybody gets paid in a way. So that's kind of been another great thing, is just meeting the right people, and people that I originally thought were my competitors, because we're in the same space, not necessarily is true. They've been some of the best partnerships that I've made, and they value the work that I do, and I value the work that they do, because I've seen results. And especially with SEO, it's one of those things that it's just kind of out there. But I've seen results, and I can confidently refer people and say, okay, you'll get your site ranked or whatnot. And same thing with web design and graphic design. My SEO guy used to outsource that to people overseas, and he said that he's seen some of my work, and he's like, wow, like it's not even like in the same category. So now he sends everything to me, and it's just been a really good partnership. I've also met some really good people at the networking events, as far as heads of marketing departments, and I'm actually the official graphic designer for, we have an Allen Event Center, which is basically, they host events, like a huge event center arena, and they have a hockey team, and basically their whole premise is they sell ads inside the space. So, huge, like digital ads, they have vinyl ads plastered all over the place, and I'm like the official graphic designer for it, and which is great. So anytime they have anyone that wants to put an ad in there that doesn't have their own graphic designer, they reach out to me, and I work with them, and they said like they all love my work. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So,
I'm hearing you tell me about this whole new lifestyle, it sounds like. So like, in the beginning you were saying, well, I was working at this job and they went out of business and I got laid off because everybody lost their jobs when that happened and that sucked. And now you're like the go-to graphic design guy for like stadiums. You've got clients
Right.
coming out the woodwork. You've got, it seems like this huge shift. You're working out of your house. You're your own boss. You've got this business now that you own.
Yep.
You're never going to lay yourself off, right? It sounds like there's this huge lifestyle change. I mean,
Yep.
how does that feel?
It's great. As my wife loves it. Yeah, because in the beginning she was a little concerned, but she wanted to. She backed me up and basically said, let's do this, and I'll try to help you any way I can. And she's very supportive, which is great. And because a lot of arguments come from money in general,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of stress when you don't have it, and the bills don't go away. Even you might lose your job, but the bills are still there. In the beginning, it was tough because I was basically trying to pick up any kind of design work or anything. I went on Upwork, which I'm sure you're familiar with Upwork.
Yeah.
And I started out, when you're first starting out on Upwork, you don't have any kind of rating or anything. You're just basically starting out from nothing. So I had to charge pretty much nothing. like it was just the projects that I would take on. I would do like a $25 project, which, like, if after the Upwork takes their fee, you end up basically with, like, I can go buy a coffee. And the reason I was doing is to build up my I wouldn't say portfolio, but more of a rating.
Yeah, like your reputation or whatever.
Reputation. So build my reviews, and was doing all these little projects just to build my reputation. And after several months, I was top rated. Like, I was rated like one of the top on there, and obviously raised my rates. Had a few clients that became full-time clients that basically they're still with me, and I'm there. They don't have an in-house graphic design or creative team. So any time they need anything for booth material or flyers or anything, they basically send me a message like, hey, can you make us this? And I just charge them an hourly rate and invoice them, and it's no longer through Upwork. So those relationships, ongoing relationships, really help as well.
Well, I got to ask you this. So I'm kind of playing this out of my head. Correct me if I kind of run off the rails, but it sounds like that the sequence of events kind of went like this. So the business that you're working for, they go out of business, so therefore you lose your job. Now you're doing like $25 projects on Upwork. The bills are still there. Your wife is being very supportive, but obviously it's a really stressful situation.
Yes.
And you went from, that situation into, okay, now you're landing $10,000, $20,000 clients. What, how did your wife respond to that? Like, were you like, hey, I just got this $10,000 project? Or like, I mean, that's huge. Like, tell me, what was that like?
I got a high five. Yeah. No, she's like, obviously she's excited, and we're all excited, and it just shows that it's possible. You just have to be confident, and it could happen. I value my work, so that's what I tell clients when they start discussing pricing, and sometimes they want to lower it. And I tell them basically, you have to see the value, because if they don't see the value, it's basically a question that you have to ask them is, do you have an issue with the overall price, or you're just not seeing the value? And that's basically what it comes down to. If they're not seeing the value, then obviously, they're not going to work with you. Mm-hmm. If it's a pricing thing, that could be adjusted to some degree, because obviously everybody has budgets, and I work with a lot of smaller companies that could be just starting out. So a lot of them say, well, we don't have that kind of cash that we can just drop on a website. Mm-hmm. So what I've done in the past is basically, my thing is, I tell them I'm not a budget designer. but I'll work with your budget. And it's just a phrasing thing. And by work with your budget, I don't mean I'm going to lower the price necessarily. It just means I can break it up into smaller payments. So if instead of paying me, usually I take half up front, so 50% deposit, I can maybe break that up into, let's say, 3 months. I've done, I think, 4 months, the longest, but they usually ended up paying sooner anyway because they were happy with the work. So.
Yeah. One of the things that we've talked about in DoubleStack a couple of times is how can you make yourself like affordable without attracting cheap clients? Like, what are some things that you can do to put your services within reach for people that you legitimately want to work with? They're not going to be the low budget, nitpicky, demanding client, but at the same time, they don't have 20 grand to write a check for all of it all at once. So
right.
Yeah, there's tons of great ideas. And what you just said about payment plans, that's one. There's all kinds of other things too. Well, let me ask you one more thing before we kind of wrap it up. So what if you were going to kind of talk back to your former self, or maybe somebody that was in your situation where maybe they've been, fiddling around on Upwork for $25 projects, or, just can't seem to break like the $1,500, $2,000 threshold for things. Maybe they're feeling really skeptical. What would you suggest? Hey, what should you do about that?
Just being confident in your skill set. And then the other thing has been key partnerships with other similar-minded people, and that has helped a lot because so for me, selling has been like the hardest thing, and now I don't even have to like sell myself, and other partners are basically doing it for me in a way, so I can focus more on actually doing the work. But at some point I might have to get help because just the volume of things, but then it'll be kind of tough because the help won't have the same vision that I do. So they might just have maybe do more technical stuff, just for me to save time on that, if that makes sense.
Well, very cool, man. Well, what a great conversation. Well, thanks for taking some time out of your day to come and have this chat here and kind of shed some light on how things are going with your business and with your new lifestyle change, and the big high five from your wife. Yep. That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, great. So if you feel like that you want to kind of do what Alex is doing and you want to see, how do you make that shift? How do I be part of a community that kind of supports all of the stuff that Alex is doing? Like how do we get how do you restructure the way that you talk to your clients? How do you get the confidence to go out there and raise your pricing? Those are all things that we talk about in DoubleStack, and something that like you and I could work together on, like writing proposals, figuring out what to say on your website, those types of things. And so if that sounds like something you want to talk about, head over to doublestack.net/call. And, let's get on the phone for like 45 minutes and take a deep dive into your business for free to see if you feel like it's going to be a good fit. And I'm totally open and honest about it. If it's not, like Alex was saying, it's like, if you don't have the ability to like do anything at this point, then you're not ready for DoubleStack yet. You're like, I'll point you to the direction to, how to get better design skills, how to build a better website, whatever. And then once you have the skills, then we'll go forward and actually, build a business around it. And so in that sense, it's not for everybody, but at the same time, you don't like have to be a guru coder. You don't have to be any sort of like, in fact, we don't even write code. I mean, all the code's pretty much there, just plugins, platforms, tools, services. There's things out there. So you don't have to be like a computer science coding genius or whatever, but you do need to have some skills, right? So you have to be able to build a website. You have to be able to, interact with clients, and you kind of want to do all of that, because we're doing two things at the same time. We're taking your current skill set and adding to it more like business consulting and business development, so that you can then tell somebody what they need to be doing and also have the technical ability to implement those things along the way. And kind of, one of the big parts of DoubleStack is let me introduce you to a bunch of things that you could be doing even after you launch the website, or things that you could do with past clients to kind of get them on that monthly retainer that Alex was talking about. So if that sounds good to you, head over to doublestack.net/call. You'll see my calendar there, book a time, and you and I will get on the phone and talk about it. And so there's Alex. Thanks for showing up, man. It was great talking to you. High five for you. All right, man. And we'll be seeing you around. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you.